prosecutors. The latest edition is the lawyers, young lawyers that we are educating. And some court staff is being trained. And now another dimension has been added to the academy and its activities, and that is doing research. So I was very happy to learn that this research cycle has been initiated and the first research cycle has completed its task. Bible says, God said, "Let there be light," and lo, there was light. I sometimes wonder, what does it signify? And when I think deeply, when there is dark, you don't know anything. When there is light, there is knowledge. So you start knowing things when there is light. So likewise, knowledge comes to you sometimes only because you exist in this world and you come to know things. But if you seek knowledge, that is research. You want to know more than what is around you, and that is research. And it is only through research that nations and societies progress. So for the last many, many years, we were noticing that research part of our knowledge has become very stagnant. And I'm very happy that in different institutions, including this one, research programs are being encouraged and being launched. It augurs very well for our future of our society. The best person to know, undertake research, I would say, is a lawyer or a judge. Because by training, a lawyer and a judge compares things, wants to know more, connects things with each other, and he is trained to seek knowledge, to find out information. So if a judge indulges in research, I think he's most suited to undertake. He has an analytical mind. He can appreciate facts more objectively, and he also has writing skills, so he can translate his ideas into words and come up with a research which others can read and benefit from. So I'm very happy that judges now are undertaking research, but I was a little surprised and a little dismayed to know that the researchers in this particular research cycle did not even go to the federally administered tribal area to actually see what is happening on the ground. And their knowledge appears to be only academic, or if I may say bookish. It will be better that the second research cycle, people go to such areas, actually live with those people, see their values, see their ways of life, and then they can really understand how those people think, what is their background, and how then we can suggest reforms to them. Because you cannot import something, you cannot import a reform and plant it in a society without knowing that society at all. Things have to adjust, things have to fall in place. There has to be a continuity of tradition. The progression has to be smooth, and people don't like things being imposed upon them. I remember that when the 25th Amendment was passed and federally administered tribal areas were merged in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, I talked to the Chief Justice of Peshawar High Court. I said, send your best judges to this area. Send your best staff to this area. Encourage your best lawyers to go and argue cases there. Why? Because there is a comparison that we have to present. We have to tell them that this is a better system. Mr. Dilawar Khan said that the previous system was expeditious but not just, but now they may get justice but not speed. So I'm sure if we send our model court judges there, the speed will also be provided. And this is exactly what I told the Inspector General of Police of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the very fine officer. And I asked him to send his best officers to this newly merged area because you have to show the best of what the regular Pakistan is. This is an uncharted territory. People don't know any difference. They have lived in this kind of a style for such a long time. They have seen tribulations. They have experienced hardship. So present your best picture to them. And it is only through your best officers that you can present your best picture so that people welcome this new system, and they will find it easier to integrate, because there will be a yearning that yes, this is a better system, we want to be a part of it. And I was told that this is exactly what is being done. There's a priority given to these areas, and very good officers as judges and as police officers are being sent to this area. I've very briefly gone through this paper book that was provided to me a few days ago, and I was impressed by the marvelous effort made. And it not only contains the history of this region, the culture, the legal system, militancy, how it grew, and then unfortunate displacement of these people, how the militancy was fought, then the issue was of rehabilitation and the present legal system and the judicial position there. Some reforms have also been suggested, and which are quite welcome, and they should be presented to the proper fora so that these reforms can be pushed. As far as militancy is concerned, this is, I suppose, another name of terrorism. On a smaller scale, it is confined to a region. In a very recent judgment, the Supreme Court of Pakistan has talked about militancy and terrorism so as to identify what kind of activity is this that we're dealing with. And if I may just read a few paragraphs, if you permit, from that judgment. It traces the history of militancy and terrorism in different parts of the world, and then tries to identify why this happened. And the sum total was that all these activities take place because of some causes, and those causes are either political or ideological or religious, mainly. These are the three different categories. So if you allow me, I'll just read a few paragraphs from this. History is full of instances where like-minded groups of people have resorted to violence as a tool for achieving political, ideological, and religious ends. Jewish sects, zealots, and Sekarai, or they were also called Sekaris, using small daggers called Sikai, hidden in their cloaks to stab people in crowds, and then melting away in the throng, attacking the Roman occupiers of Judea and their allies in public places between 2nd century before Christ and the year 70 after the death of Christ. The assassins of Persia and Syria, Muslims belonging to the Ismaili sect, who were called the assassins. Well, this word assassin comes from those assassins who were, because they were given hashish, which was called hashishin, before being launched for terrorist acts, killing their targets and threatening the governments of several states between the 11th and 13th century. So we are not dealing with a recent phenomenon. This has been there for the last about 2,000 years. Suicidal attacks carried out by different groups against the colonial rule in India, Indonesia, and Philippines in the 18th and 19th centuries. Russian anarchists attacking members and supporters of the Tsarist regime with explosives at the end of the 19th century. Japanese kamikaze pilots launching suicide attacks against American ships in the Pacific Ocean during World War II. particularly in the Battle of Okinawa in April 1945, wherein some 2,000 kamikaze pilots rammed fully fueled planes into more than 300 ships, killing about 5,000 Americans and about 2,000 kamikazes. Hezbollah supporters launching devastating attacks against the American and French forces in Lebanon in the year 1983. The Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam, LTTE, using hundreds of suicide bombers and killing thousands of people, including Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in the year 1991 and Sri Lankan President Premadasa in the year 1993, and the Marxist Nationalist Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, carrying out many suicide attacks in Turkey against a range of targets during the end of the last century and beginning of the current century, have all been universally perceived and acknowledged as terrorists, including in acts of terrorism. So you can use the word militancy for the present purposes. There are also many other instances in history where some individual acts or collective activity were and are perceived and accepted as terrorism and not just commission of normal, though heinous, offenses. In the year 1881, anarchists killed the Russian Tsar Alexander II and 21 bystanders. In the year 1901, anarchists killed the United States President McKinley, as well as King Humbert I of Italy. World War I started in the year 1914 when anarchists killed Archduke Ferdinand of Austria. The British Raj referred to Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, and many other Indian freedom fighters as terrorists. Guerrilla fighters from Mao Zedong to Ho Chi Minh and Fidel Castro killed civilians during their revolutionary campaigns, and they too were called terrorists until they triumphed. After World War II, some Jewish groups in Palestine like Haganah, Irgun, and Stern Gang fought for the creation of a Jewish state, bombing hotels and installations and killing civilians, and the British, who then governed Palestine, called those Jewish groups terrorists, and many of those terrorists, including Moshe Dayan, Yitzhak Rabin, Menachem Begin, and Ariel Sharon, later became leaders of the independent state of Israel. And ironically, those former terrorists then derided terrorism, applying this label to the Arabs, including Yasser Arafat, fighting for the very same nationhood that the Jews had fought for earlier. In Germany, in the years 1968 to 1992, the Baader-Meinhof gang killed dozens, including the head of Treuhand, the German privatization agency. In Italy, the Red Brigades kidnapped and killed Aldo Moro, a former prime minister, and the Japanese Red Army was an Asian version of that. Japan was also the home of Aum Shinrikyo, a Buddhist cult that tried to kill thousands in the Tokyo metro station using nerve gas in the year 1995. In Europe, the Irish Republican Army has been a Catholic terrorist organization for almost a century. Spain and France face a terrorist challenge from ETA and the Basque terrorist organization. Lord's Salvation Army in Uganda and Boko Haram in Nigeria are universally acknowledged as terrorist outfits. The Afghan freedom fighters were called the Mujahideen, the holy warriors, by the West when they were fighting the Soviet occupying forces, but they are now being branded as terrorists when they are fighting to oust the American occupying forces. The Muslim freedom fighters in the Indian occupied Kashmir, the Sikhs led and inspired by Bhindranwale in Punjab, the United Liberation Front and Bodo of Assam, militant groups in Tripura, Christian Mizos mounting an insurrection for decades, Christian Nagas waging a freedom struggle, and the Maoist group operating in no less than 150 out of India's 600 districts are all termed by India as terrorists. And the savagery perpetrated by Talibans of different shades in Afghanistan and Pakistan for the last many decades is generally accepted and treated as acts of terrorism. It's a very long history, but I thought it's not our problem only. It's everywhere, everywhere, and for the last about 2,000 years. So we have to learn how others have tackled this, how others have managed to control these issues. And that will be a very good guide and help to solve our own issues, because we are not inventing the wheel for the first time. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have to undertake further studies. And that is why you have to go to the place where the locale of the issue, and then also study which other countries, which other areas of the world had faced similar problems and how they were solved. This is where you can take your research to the next level. Because in every such country where this issue exists or had existed, they have done something to tackle this. And that involves not only just administrative measures, but legislations through changing the systems, education. There's a many-faced, many-pronged initiatives that have to be taken to tackle such issues. It's not just one reform that is required, or maybe one research cycle which can solve it. In the historical context of terrorism, given above shows that at different times in history, terrorism has been resorted to for achieving different political, ideological, or religious objectives. There are many explanatory theories about terrorism in modern times, but the one advanced by David Rappaport, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at the University of California, Los Angeles, in the year 2004, has received wide acceptance. The theory propounded by him is known as the waves of terrorism theory, and according to him, modern terrorism can be divided into 4 waves, which are anarchists from 1880s to 1920s, anti-colonial ranging from 1920s to 1960s, left-wing 1960s to 1990s, and religious ranging from 1990 to date. He maintains that each wave came and died out, and that these waves have at times overlapped also. The common factor in all these waves is that all the relevant acts of violence were and are universally recognized as terrorism, because the unlawful use of violence was and is meant to achieve political, ideological, or religious goals. By now, the international community understands quite well that terrorism is a species quite distinct from all other usual and private crimes, howsoever heinous or gruesomely executed. Now, this is the last part that I want to read, and it's very interesting. In his book, 21 Lessons from the 21st Century, published by so-and-so, the author Yuval Noah Harari has come up with a very interesting and quite apt analysis of how terrorists operate and succeed in their objectives. This is all relevant to your research. You should know what are they doing, how they are doing this, and how we can tackle this, and then translate this to our whatever effort in the judicial sector is. The following part of his analysis is quite enlightening, and I quote, "Though the challenges are unprecedented, and though the disagreements are intense, humankind can rise to the occasion if we keep our fears under control and be a bit more humble about our views. Terrorists are masters of mind control. Terrorism is a military strategy that hopes to change the political situation by spreading fear rather than by causing material damage. In this respect, terrorists resemble a fly that tries to destroy a china shop. The fly is so weak that it cannot move even a single teacup. So how does a fly destroy a china shop? It finds a bull, gets inside its ear, and starts buzzing. The bull goes wild with fear and anger and destroys the china shop. This is what happened after 9/11, as Islamic fundamentalists incited the American bull to destroy the Middle Eastern and China shop. Now they flourish in the wreckage, and there is no shortage of short-tempered bulls in the world. Terrorism is a very unattractive military strategy because it leaves all the important decisions in the hands of the enemy. Terrorists are so weak that they cannot wage war, so they opt instead to produce a theatrical spectacle that they hope will provoke the enemy and cause him to overreact. By killing a handful of people, the terrorists cause millions to fear for their lives. Terrorists don't think like army generals. Instead, they think like theater producers. Because we intuitively understand that terrorism is theater, we judge it by its emotional rather than material impact. Terrorists undertake an impossible mission to change the political balance of power through violence despite having no army. Every now and then a state loses its temper and reacts far too forcefully and publicly, thus playing into the hands of the terrorists. The legitimacy of the modern state is based on its promise to keep the public sphere free of political violence. Consequently, sporadic acts of political violence that kill a few dozen people are seen as a deadly threat to the legitimacy and even survival of the state. A small coin in a big empty jar makes a lot of noise. The theater of terror generates visceral fear of anarchy, making people feel as if the social order is about to collapse. The state is driven to respond to the theater of terror with its own theater of security. So instead of acting quietly and efficiently, the state unleashes a mighty storm which not infrequently fulfills the terrorists' most cherished dreams. How then should the state deal with terrorism? A successful counter-terrorism struggle should be conducted on three fronts. First, governments should focus on clandestine actions against the terrorist networks. Second, the media should keep things in perspective and avoid hysteria. The theater of terror cannot succeed without publicity. The third front is the imagination of each and every one of us. The success or failure of terrorism, therefore, depends on us. If we allow our imagination to be captured by the terrorists and then we overreact to our own fears, terrorism will succeed. If we free our imagination from the terrorists and then we react in a balanced and cool way, terrorism will fail. This is what Harari has said, and it is absolutely beautiful and so practical. In the end, I would say that the task was very challenging. The territory that you were dealing with, the culture that you were dealing with, was not difficult to comprehend or understand and come up with a solution for. But you have done a wonderful job. Your work is a wonderful study and needs the attention of the policymakers. And the sooner they get going, the better it will be, for not only for that area, but for all of us. So I pay my compliments to the team of researchers and also to the administration of the Federal Judicial Academy that they undertook this job and facilitated this job. I also am grateful to the donors and those who have helped the Federal Judicial Academy undertake this exercise. Thank you very much.